Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Hazel Mima. I'm your host, and you are in the 2 or 3 pod where God is in our midst. I'm so happy to be talking to you again. In the previous episode, which is Common Idols Today, we basically said that you're going to still focus on this same topic, but continue dissecting it. And now I'm actually getting to see that there was a structure to this, yet I didn't really plan this structure. This is how we began talking about what an idol is, a modern day idol for that matter. We talked about how to expose them. We talked about the consequences of having them and how they relate to biblical idols. We talked about examples of these idols, which is the most recent. And those are common examples that I even brought out from my own life. I didn't really realize that we basically started at the widest spectrum, branching into this narrow parts, talking about individual modern day idols, right? We left it at common examples, of which already narrowed down. But today, in this episode rather, we're going to unmask the role that media, and especially social media, has played in the shaping of our Christianity. Now, I've put that in a very interesting way, that statement. It's shaped our Christianity. It's even shaping the way that we relate to God. And we don't even realize it for most of the time. We don't realize it. We don't know that we are doing it. Sometimes we don't even know that what we are doing might be wrong. I was thinking of so many scenarios, so many examples, so many instances of how we use social media, how we interact with people on it, the type of content we release, consume even. There's so many ways in which these platforms have been and are continuing to shape our Christianity. But we're going to backtrack just a bit. As we dive into that, we're going to backtrack and talk about moral compasses. And we're going to see why social media has actually come up. Because as I said, I didn't structure this. When I was planning this episode about moral compasses, I didn't even know it was going to go into social media and back to idols. But here we are. And here God is always directing. Mine, I came to such a freeing revelation recently that when Jesus said, I will build my church, yeah, referring to the rock that was Peter or is Peter, that on this church, on this rock rather, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail. Someone just focused on the fact that he said my church. He's building it on Peter, but it was his church, his ministry, his body. And that freed me because it also made me realize that this is his podcast ministry. I'm just a steward. I'm just the lead pastor, if I may say that. But this isn't my church. And I'm saying that freed me because it made me see just how much I actually can just surrender control. I'm just here to follow what God says I should do. Right? It's not about, oh, what should I talk about? What should I do? What should I post? What? I'm just there following what I'm told. And that freed me. But I digress. Let's jump right at it, guys. Now, this topic came to me after a conversation with someone, one of my friends, and he was basically asking me about a certain predicament that he found himself in. He started liking someone, later realized that this person is a cousin to his in-law. And basically the question was, is it actually right to pursue such a relationship? And even as he was posing that question and just talking about it, my immediate answer and my immediate thought was, well, isn't that incest? But the way that he reacted made me come to the realization that we actually don't draw our morals from the same source as society. And I'm going to explain why I'm saying that just in a bit. But from this background story, I perceived this action as one thing that he didn't see it as. And the reason behind that is actually based on a sermon that I watched a certain time. And I just feel like I have a lot of background stories. But let's just decipher this with you guys, okay? The pastor was talking about expectations and offense and disappointment and how all those three are actually linked together. And he explained that if you, as a person, were to expect someone in society, a total stranger, to do something for you or to treat you in a certain way, you don't know this person, never met them, but just as general courtesy, you expected them to do something or to not do something, but they disappointed your expectations. Then the level of disappointment that you actually would have because of that action would be, if you are looking at a scale of 0 to 100, it would be near 0 because this person is a stranger. So ideally, they have no emotional tie to you, meaning that the actions cannot hurt you. And I'll just give a brief example of this. If you're a pedestrian on the road and a car comes speeding, splashes water on you, right? The person doesn't stop. They don't, like hoot or something. They don't even acknowledge what they've done, even though they've probably seen what they did. Now, this is a total stranger. You've never seen them. You'll probably just have a brief moment of anger or frustration or disappointment in humanity. I don't know. You'll feel the consequence of what the person has done to some degree. It might even disrupt your morning or afternoon or whatever. But some couple of minutes later, you'll have to brush it off. But imagine if this same person was a friend, if this same person was a sibling, or even just an acquaintance, a person that you actually know, who drove past you, splashed water on you, saw what they did, and sped off. No apology, no, what can I do to help? Nothing. Then the level of disappointment would be a bit higher. And that's because you had an expectation of this person. You knew them and you expected that they would show you a level of courtesy based on the relationship that you have. And so he just kept making those comparisons, starting from a total stranger to someone you know, to someone you actually share a bond with, like a friend or a family member. And then now he went to pastors and religious leaders. And he said that if you saw a pastor doing something that's a random, let me not say random, but any other Christian was to do, if you saw a pastor stealing, if you heard that they had committed adultery, if you heard that they had, turned their eyes away from the poor, what would your reaction be compared to the everyday Christian? Let me say that for argument's sake. How much more disappointed would you be in this religious leader? Things that even you yourself, we all do as Christians sometimes, we all fall short. But every time we see this standard of what Christianity should be in this vessel, it's much more amplified. The expectation was much greater on this person, and that's why the disappointment is greater. And so this is just not a quick really, it's a prelude to moral compasses and how they work. And by moral compass, I believe that you should even just give a brief definition. It's your north point, it's your guiding light, guiding star, that set of ideas or beliefs that you hold near and dear to you that actually shape how you live your life, the things that you see to be wrong, the things that you view as right. Yeah, your moral compass. Now, if it's on society, if it's on culture, and what you just see, imagine someone who's just born into the world. That's now society, politics, economy, everything around it, and the beliefs that shape those systems in society. If your moral compass is in society, then a lot of things will pass in your life. A lot of things won't really seem like they're that bad to do, that they're that wrong to even think of doing. A lot will pass. But now let's bring it closer. If your moral compass is in traditions, perhaps you belong to a certain tribe or a certain cultural background, a certain nationality, whereby your set of beliefs is special to that group of people, then the bottle keeps getting narrower on what can actually pass. Perhaps in this tribe, you're told that you can't actually drink or eat this. When you're greeting people and you don't do this, it's wrong. We have this specialized rules based on each tribe, based on each cultural background, based even on regions rather. And the thing about culture that I want you to take note of is the fact that it is relative. Because as we've said, it depends on the culture you're from. And that's the second tier of moral compasses. But now the one that we as Christians should hold near and dear to our hearts and actually follow through with is God and His Word. And if your moral compass is in God, is in His Word, then a lot won't even be up for debate. And I just want to string this back to what we first talked about as the background of this topic, which is my conversation with my friend. Because for me, what it sounded like is that, yes, this family tie is quite long and very weak, very indirect. This family tree might not even be, those branches might never even meet. But by virtue of the fact that you have an in law, it means that your family through marriage. And for me, that was absolute. There's no debate about it. That was just that. But for this other person, they were looking at culture, they're looking at their tribe. They're saying that, oh, this is actually not a bad thing where I'm from. And that's why we're saying culture is relative. But if this person was from another culture, probably it would be wrong. And that's the funny thing about it. How do morals just change like that? I don't know, guys. It's a very weird thing to think about. But that's the point we're trying to make here. If you have your moral compass in God and what He says in His Word, a lot is not up for debate, and this actually makes you assertive. Your yes is your yes, your no is your no. It's not about pros and cons. It's not about, picky ponky. It's not up for debate. There's no room to slide in another opinion because what God said is the truth, and that truth is absolute. In society, we talk about following your truth. You talk about following what feels right to you, following your heart. And that's even more relative than culture, more relative than tribal rules. But this whole conversation on absolute truths and relative truths, I feel like it can really stir up a lot of debate between sets of people. And so I'm glad that's not the focus for today because that's not what we are here for. If your moral compass is in God and His Word, then it's absolute. It's very stringent. What He says you should do, then do. What He says we should not do, then we just obey. And I want to leave it at that because we're going to circle back to society. As we've said, it's even more relative than tribes, than nationalities, than regions, than cultural backgrounds. And the worst part about it being so relative is the fact that we're spending so much of our time, investing so much of our resources in social media. Social media that was made by man, controlled by algorithms that are also made by man, bearing so many opinions that are contrary to each other, that are relative, that are shaping our thoughts, shaping our behavior, shaping the way that we see the world, see ourselves, and see each other. I don't think we really break down the importance and the effect that social media has on us as human beings. And that's because a lot of us have not come to the realization of manning our gates. Manning our gates. And this is a principle that is in the Bible. What we see, what we hear, what we interact with. These are gateways to our soul. Our ears and our eyes are gateways to our soul. And we're going to really pull a string with this one. So just go with me on this. If our eyes and our ears are gateways to our soul, and we're told that as believers, after surrendering, for argument's sake, just to tie all this together, after surrendering our souls to Jesus, to God, saying yes in total surrender, that you are my Savior, you are Lord over my life, After salvation, we are told that the next step is transformation, right? And this transformation comes by the renewal of our minds, by focusing on godly attitudes, godly values, and ethical attributes. That's what Romans 12, verse 2 tells us. And so a lot goes on in our minds, is what we are trying to say. But in this society and in this generation, we're giving so much of our mind and our attention to social media, which is then shaping our thoughts. And something else I want to bring into this loop, to this string of ideas, please stay with me, is that as someone whose soul has been won to Christ, and someone who knows that this journey of salvation does not end at the altar call, it's a journey of transformation, right? Christianity is a journey of transformation. If the media and social media is day in and day out shaping our thoughts and our minds, thereby transforming us, then it's safe to say that social media is winning our souls in this generation. And that's why I wanted us to start with the aspect of moral compasses. Because at this point, we're getting to see that your soul can either be won to God, to your tribe and your culture, or to society. Because all of these three have the power to transform the way we think, thereby renewing our minds, to transform our lifestyles through what we hear, through what we see. I mean, even just the thought of that is a bit astonishing. Not a bit, it is astonishing. It's mind blowing, guys. I don't know if you can see the intensity of what I've just said. Media has the power to win your soul. And we're going to even read some verses to back that up, right? Proverbs 11, verse 30, which literally talks about soul winning. And it's telling us the fruit of the consistently righteous is a tree of life. And he who is wise captures and wins souls for God. He gathers them for eternity. And by now, we've said that everything that the enemy uses is something that he has corrupted from what God already put in place as a system. If there's a system for someone being you and I as a Christian, if there's a system that is laid out for us to go out there and to capture and win souls, best believe that there's another system contrary to what God is trying to do, that is trying to win and capture souls for something else. I was listening to a podcast on this, and this guy basically said that social media is our new warfare. It's this generation's new warfare. A lot of what we think about ourselves, about our family, about other people, our country, our world, our futures, even God, what we think about God, a lot of it is just stored in that hub of social media. It's the new warfare. And something about warfare, guys, we need to recognize the importance of our minds when it comes to warfare. Our mind is the battlefield. Even in society, even in society, the saying of the battle is lost or won in the mind exists, right? The battle is won or lost in the mind. If you already believe that you can't do it, then you've already set yourself up for failure. If you already believe that you're not good enough, that you're not perfect, the perfect image that God has actually created you to be, the image that He said that you are, you've already set up your esteem and your confidence for failure. I mean, the mind is a battlefield. And so, whatever can actually control our minds, whatever can control the ways we think, our thought processes, can control a lot about us, can control our behavior, what we say, and how we act. And that's what I'm saying. We don't even realize it's happening. It's a gradual process. Now we've come to the realization that our souls can be won to other things outside of God. 1 Corinthians 3 verse 5. Well, it's actually just the whole verse, the whole chapter rather. It's the whole chapter. But for this context's sake, we're going to read verse 5. And it's saying, "What then is Apollos and what is Paul? Just servants through whom you believed in Christ, even as the Lord appointed to each his task." I'll just give a brief context. Paul is talking to the Corinthians. He's telling them that they're still spiritual babes, that he cannot even talk to them in a advanced spiritual language. He's saying he cannot even give them solid food because they're still at a point where they're acting out of their fleshy nature. And if they were to be asked, if they were to be asked, then any of them would say that, oh, I am a disciple of Paul. I'm a disciple of Apollos. And so Paul is now saying, what then is Apollos and what is Paul? We're just servants. We're just the ones who were introducing you to the kingdom. And then now verse 6 is saying that I planted, Paul speaking, and Apollos watered, but God, all the while, God was causing the growth. So neither is the one who plants nor the one who waters, but only God who causes the growth. Now, as we've said, any system in God's kingdom can be corrupted for the other kingdom. So we're seeing here that I can plant as a Christian, you can water, and this is speaking to bringing someone into the kingdom. Just like these people introduced the idea of salvation to the Corinthians. I can plant, you can water, but it's God that causes the growth. First of all, you are getting to see that there's an aspect of gradual growth. The same way you plant and water a seed day by day, monitoring it, pruning it, it's a gradual process. So winning a soul, it's not an overnight thing. And that's why it's really scary if this is a process that's happening outside of God's kingdom. If social media is winning your soul, then it planted that seed in like 2020. And day by day, it's watering. When the seed is just on the verge of, dying, it's being watered. The way you can just struggle and grapple with a plant, holding on to dear life, it's trying to discolor, unaongeza some nutrient to it, planting, watering, growth. And it's really scary, as I've said, because if this is happening to us, then it means that someone whose content you're consuming is watering. Another content creator is watering. Another content creator is watering. The system of algorithms is helping to keep this up. But all the while, the enemy is causing that growth. It's not even about the content creator. It's not about doom scrolling. It's not even about social media. These are just channels. The same way God causes the growth, the enemy is causing the downfall. Slowly by slowly. But they're all working towards the same purpose. That's what verse 8 says. He who plants, he who waters, they're one in importance and in esteem, working towards the same purpose. And each will receive his reward according to his labor. I'm tempted to finish this chapter, but it is quite long, 22 verses. So I just urge you to read it for the sake of this context of what we're saying. 1 Corinthians chapter 3. It's a process. And in everything that we're saying in this episode, we're just going to keep backtracking to where we started, our moral compasses. And so far we've said that any of these three moral compasses can win our souls. And equally, that means that any of these three can be worshipped. And what do I mean by worship? Fear. Reverent fear. We're going to read Proverbs 1 verse 7 just for that definition before I continue the point. It's saying the reverent fear of the Lord, which is worshipping him and regarding him as truly awesome, is the beginning and the preeminent part of knowledge, its starting point and its essence. But arrogant fools despise skillful and godly wisdom and instruction and self-discipline. We're saying that any of these three channels can be worshipped, can be reverently feared. And these two channels away from what our moral compass should be, that is, God, can also become an idol. And actually, when I came to this realization, to this point in the episode, I just started asking myself, is social media becoming our new God as a generation? I said that I listened to a podcast, and a lot of the themes that I'm communicating actually came from there. But I've also learned to personalize them because I related it so much. The guy was talking about AI and algorithms and how they are killing our awe and our wonder for God. Such an interesting title. That's why I even clicked on it. He talked about how ChatGPT once used to be ChatDVT, And I shared this in our Bible study, and I just want to share it again on this platform. ChatGPT was once ChatDVT. Now, this isn't another AI platform. This is short for Divine Voice Technology. And that basically means the voice of God, prompting the voice of God, the same way that chat and other AI platforms are being prompted today. And he said that there's really nothing new under the sun. I mean, we see the aspect of prompts and things being generated, and we think that these are new technologies, but we forget that God was prompting from the beginning. From Genesis, God said, "Let there be light." And that was a prompt. Let there be. And there was. This prompt generated and brought into existence creation as we know it. So from the beginning, God has been prompting. God is the source. His word is that prompt. And the Holy Spirit is the executor of the prompt in our lives as Christians. But lately, we don't even seek the source, let alone the executor, let alone the Holy Spirit, because He's there to help us. He's there to help us in what God has told us to do. But we don't even go to God. These days, everything is so accessible online. And that's why I'm saying, is media becoming our new God? Everything is so accessible to the point that you forget, oh, my maker knows what I should do in this moment. So many of us have become accustomed to asking chat, to asking other AI platforms about our personal life. And sadly, unfortunately, we've heard of so many cases whereby people have been given advice to harm themselves, even to the point of death, because of some of the advice they're getting from AI. Even in movies, such themes are just picked up, whereby these platforms are they're really just saying the most outrageous things. You're going to this platform with your frustration, and the situation that you actually explain seems more dire than it might actually be because of your emotional state. And so this platform that has been trained on intellectuality, not morality, intellectuality, will give you the most reasonable solution to your predicament. And some of these reasonable solutions aren't even trained on legality, let alone morality. They aren't specialized to actually tell you that, killing is wrong, stealing is wrong. In as much as you might be feeling this, do not do that. They're not trained on morality. They're not trained on what is wrong or what is right. Because as we started by saying, what is wrong and right is relative based on your moral compass. And so, unless you want to assume that these are platforms that have been trained based on the Bible, you cannot take your problems and get solutions for problems of life from AI. The moral compass that it has been trained on is based in society. And as we said, a lot will pass. A lot will pass. And that's what we are making our new source. That's what we are making our new moral compass. AI platforms, social media, something that is so accessible. You want to go out. What places can I go eat? What places are people going to? You want to buy this. You want to experience this. What places are people traveling to? I mean, everything is so accessible to the point where most of us, or rather, let me say, in most situations, we don't think to go back and ask God what we should do. And that's what this guy was describing as chat DVT. And the worst thing about this is whatever God has purposed for our lives, for us to be, for us to do, is now being replaced by what we are seeing we should be doing. And this in turn brings about something that's really dangerous and actually quite ironic. We go to God praying based on our new acquired goals. And this guy actually described it as using God as the ATM to your idol. Hmm? I heard that and I was like, wow, we actually do that. We use God as the ATM, as the means to our new acquired pursuit, to our new acquired taste, our new devotion, affections. We're using God as the ATM to satisfy the desires that we've picked up from social media. It's a bit crazy. And I believe we've talked about this before when we were talking about refuse to be lost in society. We talked about social media, but this is now social media coming up as an idol. And this is a way that we didn't even unmask before. We're losing our awe and our wonder for God. Once one thing is gradually decreasing, it means another one is gradually increasing. As we lose our awe and our wonder and our fear and our reverence for God, our worship, as we lose that idea of Him as being truly awesome, your dopamine rising at the thought of going to church and singing, at the thought of fellowship with believers, at the thought of praying, communing with Him. As we lose that, then something else is replacing it. It's never a vacuum. It's never a vacuum. And in this case, that's social media. The rise of dopamine that we get just at the thought of, hey, let me get home and get on this platform. Like just the dopamine at the anticipation, it's replacing something else that you should have been anticipating in God and in His kingdom. This guy, hey, I'm actually remembering bits and pieces as I go. This guy actually said, and in case you are lost, this guy is from the podcast I was listening to that was relating to this. And he said that if our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit, then it means that we have been given worship tools, equipment that will help us worship. And he said that, funny enough, he's actually a doctor. So this is a very interesting mix between medicine and spirituality. And he said that hormones are worship chemicals. Hormones are worship chemicals. And it's making so much sense now that I'm even saying it. Because remember, we once said that if the enemy can control your emotions, he can control the way that you act. And a lot of our hormones control our mood. We just talked about dopamine. Just the anticipation of doing something can drive us. Dopamine is a focus chemical. It's an anticipation chemical, feel good chemical. Whatever it is that makes our dopamine rise will make us move towards that direction of the anticipation, that reward feeling. And he actually ended up saying that our feel good chemicals, which are dopamine and serotonin, are worship chemicals. Hormones that can actually replenish us as human beings, from our neurons to our gut, affecting our digestion system. I mean, if these things can be tampered with, if these things are left in the wrong hands, in the wrong pursuits, then your body as a temple can easily be corrupted. The body that was created to be a temple for the Holy Ghost can easily be corrupted. These are worship chemicals. And based on what we choose to focus on, based on what we choose to adore, to devote our time, devote our energy, resources to, these chemicals come in and shape how we become. And actually, I wasn't even planning on saying that. Just the realization of it making sense as I was talking. I mean, God. And of course, now I want to talk about my own experience with social media. Because as usual, and as you should know by now, this is a very practical space. When we're talking about modern day problems, we're talking about how to tackle them. We're not leaving you with theory. I just thought, as someone who's used social media as a consumer, probably even still using it just at a lower intensity, as someone who once wanted to be a content creator, probably even began to some extent, I've gotten to see that there are two ways in which media makes us unspiritual. And I'm using the word unspiritual because it relates to what we read in 1 Corinthians. Paul referring to the Corinthians as people who are not spiritual because they're driven by their fleshy nature. They're still spiritual babes. They cannot handle solid food. And the media makes us unspiritual in two ways. We idolize worldly things that we see as consumers, and we idolize ourselves as content creators. And I think the first part is self-explanatory. Seeing what other people have, seeing what other people are doing, that easily shapes what drives you as a person, what you see and what you hear. It's very easy to put that image of perfection, of success on a pedestal and actually change your life, change your systems to match that. That's self explanatory, and we can go on and on about that. But idolizing ourselves is a realization that I just came to. It explained a certain dilemma I had about whether I actually wanted to fully indulge in being a content creator. And what do we mean by this? As a devoted Christian, trying to do content on fitness, on healthy living, on get ready with me outfits, on travel content. I mean, as I'm saying this, I want you to picture some of the content that you've seen that is under these categories. Fitness. I mean, what type of clothes do these girls wear? There is a very thin line between what we are being fed to as workout content and what is basically just a thirst trap. Very thin line. Actually, the line is almost non-existent at this point. Get ready with me. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritties, guys. Just think of the type of content that you see under these categories. As a Christian getting into this space, I mean, are you getting my point? For you to even get into this space, you need to know what is, if I may say, trending, because you're not being a content creator to fail. You're there to get your money, probably, if it's something you're doing as a side hustle. You're not there to fail. You want to actually get the likes. You want to get the engagement. But if you see what's booming and what's trending, is it something that aligns with you and your values as a devoted Christian? But even for argument's sake, let's say that you're getting into a pure Christian content space. Leave alone the fitness, leave alone nutrition, leave alone, fashion. You're getting into, even just for example, what I'm doing right now, just having a podcast and a platform, perhaps on Instagram or TikTok, whereby you can now showcase all of that. Who's to say that the likes, that the shares, that the comments, the followers won't be your measure of success of the ministry? And what I'm just trying to point out is how algorithms, likes, shares, comments, and all of these things that are basically dependent on human beings can easily overtake the pure reason in which you're actually engaging with this platform in the first place. Who's to say that even Christian influences aren't driven by the likes? They aren't driven by this idea of being famous, being known. And as we said, that can in itself become an idol because it has replaced the devotion to God. It has taken up God's place in their hearts, and it can easily take his place in my own heart. Social media is such a tricky place to handle. And so that was my dilemma. Is it really possible to create content, whether it is, let me say, worldly content like fitness, nutrition, worldly for lack of a better word, or even just pure Christian content? Is it really possible to create any type of content whilst glorifying God in totality without being drawn in to the demands of the algorithm? Because as we've said, this is very much a man-made platform. You cannot be in man's territory, algorithms that are controlling how this territory works, and then still expect that you won't struggle to keep this God-based. It's almost like a clash of kingdoms in my view. Where does pursuit for souls through media end and growing as an influencer begin? How do you even differentiate these two pursuits? I don't know, guys. Perhaps when I finally answer this question or have God walk with me on this, then we'll get to see whether or not I become a content creator. Because currently, it's a bit tricky. It's tricky. It's a sticky situation. You can easily be roped into the world, even with the purest of intentions. But of course, as with almost everything in Christianity, it's not really about what you say and what you do, but more of where your heart is in all of it. God searches the heart. People might be doing the purest of things with the most vile intentions in their hearts, and we never see that as human beings. So God searches the heart. But the worst thing about it is we might not even know our own hearts. If I start content for the sake of God's kingdom, is it really for God or is it for me? It's not a rhetorical question. I need answers. I need answers. Y'all better tell me what you think. Because, hey, and I believe we're just going to leave it at that. We're just going to close it there. I'm so happy because I feel like a lot that I've said just came together so beautifully in a way that I cannot even take credit for. This has been God through and through, and I'm so grateful for His presence. Oh man, I'm forgetting something that I should have shared. I wanted to share when preparing this about how people with the most pure intentions can still be roped into what the algorithm demands. And actually, it was the guy, he posed the question, would Jesus really be happy with what we are doing nowadays in churches, taking photos of intimate moments with God? Photos for posting, for that matter. And I saw where he was going with that concern, because imagine someone got out of bed that day, actually barely got out of bed, didn't even have the strength to come up with a proper outfit. This person was at the verge of breakdown, at the verge of just giving up on life. And of course, that's worst case scenario. I feel like some of us feel the same way in just lower intensities. There's a lot of discouragement going around, especially in Kenya, the economy, all of that. But with all of that, someone still brought themselves to church, to the presence of the Lord, and they're pouring out their heart to God. In that moment, they're connecting with their maker, their helper, and that moment is being captured on camera for social media. I don't know, guys. Actually, I won't even have a conclusive remark on that. It's just food for thought. What really are we doing with media? What really is the role of media in church? And if it is to grow the kingdom, then what ways can we better the methods in which we do that? What ways can we be sensitive to people who probably don't want those moments online? Food for thought. So, once again, thank you so much if you've made it this far. Be sure to share this with someone, a friend, a family member, an acquaintance. Perhaps just share it on your social media platform. I mean, I mean, dominate the content space. That's what you're meant to do, to occupy until he comes. So let's strive to also occupy in this media space as Christians, as believers, as people who are committed to a revived generation. Let's not go to church and then before you even exit church, you're already doom scrolling. Occupy that space as a believer. Make your presence, which basically carries the presence of God, felt in that space. And don't forget to give this a 5-star rating, a like, a thumbs up from whatever platform that you're streaming from. Oh my, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I don't know if you can even tell, man. I don't know if you can even tell. But I'm excited to talk to you yet another time. As we said, we're continuing this series in this month of May. So stay tuned and have yourself a lovely and an amazing and a blessed day or night, depending on when you're listening to this. Bye.